Right. And that's it. No, I'm kidding. Finish in 30 seconds.
Camera, action.
Yeah, I don't know who else is doing these, but I got interested in ungrading for some time now. Just that when I used to be the chair of the department, I didn't have time to really implement it and do it, seriously. I just kept getting more information, reading more papers about it. And in 2020, there was during the assessment day, there was a lot of talks about ungrading. So to me, that was like the sign, I gotta do this. The first moment I can, I have to do it. And I think intuitively, it's always been, excuse me, it's always been intuitively that students do not really get the idea what grades are, or we don't get the idea of what grades should be. And the reason why I'm doing this is part of my teaching philosophy. In my opinion, everything we do should reflect our teaching philosophy. And mine is quite simple. It has two components. One is care and the other is reciprocity. And the care part is kind of the most important thing that speaks about the connection that needs to be between students and instructor. If they are really convinced that the one teaching them cares about them, they will care about the person. They will care about what's there to learn. And then, of course, from our part is, well, how relevant is what I'm trying to teach you, especially in this day and age that they can come and say, I think you're wrong because I Googled it and Google says something different. So the information is really out there. The way we teach actually has to change quite dramatically. In fact, sometimes I don't think I'm teaching content because the content is just out there. The problem is how students navigate all the information or misinformation or wrong information that is out there. And then I think that's where we have most of our work out.
Well, it's all out there, but they don't know what they need to know to be
Exactly.
successful in their discipline.
Yeah.
And that's what our role is.
Yeah, basically now we guide more than anything else.
Yeah.
Before the internet, I think professors were the holders of the truth, right?
Right.
Now no one believes us because people get apparently PhD overnight because they watch a YouTube movie or something like that. So it's times is just changing.
Yeah.
This is also part of three things that I do in my class as impact practices. So grading is just one of them. The other two is active learning, and the other two is the development of, if it were, metacognition. So I have other tools to help students develop their own confidence in the stuff that they're learning. I use technology also for that because it's available, but that will be another talk.
My understanding of that is thinking about thinking.
That's how psychologists probably define it, but it doesn't mean much. I mean, it's confusing.
Well, you're reflecting on what you're learning, I suppose.
Yeah. The way I take it is reflecting in how they're learning and how they can show what they're learning.
Okay. Because it really means technically beyond cognition.
Exactly. In simple things, for example, if I ask a question to all of the students, I don't want them to reply right away. I want them to first show me if they want to do that. And second, I ask, so how sure are you of your answer? And when I ask how sure are you, I want you to think, are you willing to bet your entire course on this one answer? That's how, if you say I'm sure, that's what you should be thinking, because otherwise you're not sure. And it's okay not to be sure.
Yeah.
So if they agree that they want to answer, then it's okay, give me the answer. And if the answer is correct, and they said, I was really very sure, and the answer is correct, well, that's a one metacognitive level.
Okay.
That the student is aware of what they know. That's what we all want them to be. But not everybody is like that. A lot of them are not sure what they know. They play it safe and say, well, I'm not gonna say I'm sure, so I'm not sure of this. they answer and they are correct. And I say, well, that metacognitive level that you're displaying is you are unaware that you know. Usually that leads to second guessing.
Yeah.
And then we all know that students are master second guessers, right? They overthink things and they end up choosing the incorrect choice in one of those questions. So that's the third thing that that I do in class. So about the ungrading part, I always like to start with this because this is the perfect illustration to me. When a student asks his Zen master, how long will it take me to reach enlightenment, right? And the master says, well, 10 years. And then they said, but if I study very hard, okay, then it's 20 years. But if I work really hard and become the most dedicated student, in the ashram, in the monastery, and the teacher said, well, in that case, it's going to take you 30 years. And the master's explanation is that if you have one eye on how close you are to achieving your goal, then that leaves you only one eye to do your task. That's why it takes you a lot longer. And sometimes I think that's where we are. We are so into how a student is doing instead of how much are they learning. And how are they doing implies how are we measuring that. So, of course, it gets us into the assessment. And my opinion on assessment is that it's relevant, it's necessary, but sometimes we get lost into the frequency of assessment. And we forget to ask the question, how are they learning? And it's still very, very arguable, what tools do we have that truly show us their learning? And grades are really embedded into those systems that we have to select those who show, according to us, who is learning, who is not learning. So grades, in the end, happen to be perhaps the most unequitable measures that we have for student learning, actually. And the history of grading in the U.S. it really goes back to I would say the 1800s, because before the first cited official record of grading in 1785, before the one classroom, the schoolhouse, there were no grades there. Everything was more peer-driven. There was non-transactional, meaning by transactional I mean that students say, I'll do this assignment to the best of my ability if you give me a good grade. If you give me a good grade, that's the transaction. A student doesn't say, I'm going to do this to the best of my ability because I'm really curious about what this has to teach me. But the grade is always in front of them. The first day of class, I ask my students, the first question is, how are you feeling today? Because they don't know me, I don't know them. There's 100 different reasons why they may be nervous, And there is always, I would say every time I do it, it's about a third of the class. I do these real-time polling systems, they're anonymous, and they can see exactly when I say nervous or apprehensive or I'm peachy or I'm relaxed. Usually the nervous, apprehensive, the combination of those adds up to like 30%. And so what are you nervous about? And always, almost invariably, the grades. So are you already thinking about your grade today? We haven't even started, but you're thinking about your grade. You're stressed about your grade. Well, I don't know if I'm going to pass this class. Is it okay? That's probably not the right question, right? I don't know if I'm going to pass. Maybe the question is, so what do I need to do to learn? I teach microbiology, so what do I need to do here to learn microbiology without thinking what the grade is going to be? And it's very difficult.
But sometimes they're high impact kinds of courses. For example, I think nurses have to take your class, right?
Yeah.
Yes. That's right. To pass and if you don't pass go, you don't collect $200 kind of a thing. So it really is a high
stressor.
Yeah,
it's a stressor. And they're already thinking, if I don't do this, my life is just going to end there. My life is going to turn around. My life.
It's going to have a negative impact somehow.
And it's the first day of class.
Yeah.
When we haven't even talked about what the content is. So I think to me that's very important, and it's very important for me for them to know that they are probably stressing too much for something that shouldn't be stressful. Because we're talking about learning, right? I know, sounds naive, but that's exactly what we're talking about, learning. And when you get to a class, you are not there because of a grade that would be very sad. You're there because you really want to learn that. If it's necessary for your program, well, what is this class teaching me that I need in my program? Because otherwise it becomes kind of a waste of time.
Well, and some students are motivated differently. You can imagine that some students really want to know the information as it applies, to their degree and their discipline. And there are other students that don't really give a rat's tail, but they have to punch that.
Yes.
They have to punch that box in order to get to the next stage.
Yes. So from the 1800s, we started to see all these different systems, and now in the 2000s, when more automation became available, with different LMS systems, and now that we have AI that does grading for you, I mean, it's getting a lot easier to standardize all that. And I'm against standardization of stuff, especially in education. People don't think the same way.
I kind of am too. Are you familiar with ID Tech in Indiana? Their medical assistant program, the curriculum is the same for all, I don't know how many campuses they have, like 20-something campuses. Are there any regional differences that they can incorporate in?
I also had to, this is kind of a disclaimer that I tend to be very heretic about certain things.
I probably am too.
Between naive, heretic, and idealistic, I would say that would describe me, because to me, at least, what I observe in students is that not two students learn the same way, but I'm forcing them to do it with one tool. If I give both the same tool, thinking I'm treating you the same way, okay, that's equality, right? But it's not equity. There is more work, actually, and it's more difficult. I recognize that, to find out what works for each student. So I don't see myself ever teaching in a class that has 200 people, because I could never do that.
Well, it's a double-edged sword, because here's what I encounter sometimes, particularly when students go to clinicals. They can have 5 preceptors teach them a skill all differently, and the student gets confused. And so I explain to my students, there's more than one way to skin a cat, but I'm going to show you this way, okay? Because I've discovered in my own experience that it's the most common sense, straightforward. We're all going to do it this way, okay? Unless you can show me, like with skills, for example, clinicals, unless you can show me you can do it differently but safe and effective, then that's okay. And that takes some of the stress out of it, I think. But you're right that they are going to come to a problem with different approaches based on their skill sets.
Well, I teach science, and science is very rigorous, and science is very strategic. Some people don't have a strategic mind, and yet they want to learn this. Some people are very strategic, and it becomes easier for them to
well, they see the patterns, and they follow the pattern.
But for somebody who's not strategic, for example, following the steps is a must. They have to follow the steps exactly as the steps are there. So, so in science, the standardization it's appropriate because of the comparisons that can be made, right, between 2 different experiments.
Sure.
But when we're talking about education, we're talking about something a little bit different. If we kind of approach it as science, I suppose. But when we are talking about learning, and learning is a complicated thing. It's not an easy thing. It's not easy. It's not even easy to explain what it is, right? These I found in some of the references that I was reviewing for these. When a student says, well, I remember the first time that a grading rubric was attached to a piece of writing. Suddenly, all the joy was taken away. I was writing for a grade. I was no longer exploring for me. I want to get that back. And this is from a student. Rubrics.
Insightful.
Yes.
She's insightful.
Yeah. And I'm a little bit against rubrics too. I mean, but I understand that we have to use them. I understand that it's a good way to tell students, this is my expectation. So if you want to excel in this particular assignment, okay, this is what you at least should have. Beyond that, obviously, always the better. right? But the bare minimum is here. Yeah. And I'm like a little bit against rubrics as well, but until we have a better tool, I guess I have to still keep using them, but I have to be very aware that they're not as powerful or as good a tool as we think they are, just like tests. Tests, um, in my opinion, they don't measure a whole lot. I mean, we would have to be really good at designing tests to measure learning, but what we normally call tests, they probably measure how well the students follow instruction, right, if any. And if
Or
a
what
student
they're
has,
able to memorize.
yeah, or if a student had an emergency the night before, but is terrified of not showing up for a test because the instructor might not give a second chance or something, at best, we're going to be measuring how they feel
Right.
when they are taking the test. And we have all been there. If our mind is dealing with some other things, even what we know doesn't come out right. So when I see grading systems that are heavily based on testing, is when I kind of raise my eyebrows, right? And say, what are we really measuring in a class that is 90% based on testing? You can see here, because
Oh, okay.
there are so few that it's more a conversation
Okay.
than a presentation. That's okay. So we criticism against grading. I mean, it's been forever. It's been like 80 years there with data and things, but we still do it. So what I wanted to talk about is there are other ways in which we can still grade. I'm going to quote unquote that because by law we have to give a grade. I think MIT doesn't do grades anymore. They do pass fail, right? So pass means you show me in many different ways that you know or that you can do this, and fail means, well, you didn't show me that, so we gotta do it again. But we have all sorts of scales, A plus, A plus plus, almost A super A. So
Yeah.
those things that
Yeah.
that I don't use even when I have to give a grade. To me, it's A or it's B. What is an A plus? Like
Plus,
A and a
minus,
half,
yeah.
or because we go down to the numerical calculation of that, so we come up with all of those different buckets in which we put people. Right? So the reality is that you were saying this before we started, right? There is really plenty of research done in grading. They don't they don't show.
demotivators.
They demotivate people. They don't encourage. What we all would like students to have is their intrinsic motivation rather than extrinsic motivation. Extrinsic meaning the transactional part, right? I'm going to do my best in this assignment, but you're going to give me an A. And that's the bargain that we have. And of course, when I do this in my class, I don't expect that I'm going to change their minds in 16 weeks after how many years in the educational system that is based on that. And even our families that tells us, but you need good grades because it's the grades that get you here, it's the grades that get you that. It would be so different if it's what you know that gets you there, right? No, it's your grades.
Right.
I do ask these to students. Most of my students want to be nurses. So they volunteer for the exam. I said, so here is this student, and it looks like a fence, all straight A's, like a fence.
Yeah.
All A's. And there's this student that, well, some C's there, some B's there, a few A's there. They don't want to go into nursing, but who gets a better chance to at least be looked at first? And they tell me, because I don't know, I'm not the coordinator of that area, but they said, your grades,
Well, selective admission.
the
yeah,
better
that was part of
grades.
it,
And then I said, fine, that's a given. So this person would have the better chance to get into the program. Now, the grades, and they're on paper, right? There's nothing in a transcript that says, oh, but John is really like this. No, there's nothing like that. It's just numbers or letters.
Right.
And then I asked, which one will be the better nurse?
Right.
And then silence. Because how do we even measure that?
Because being the most knowledgeable nurse is not necessarily the better nurse. If you look at other dimensions of what nursing entails.
Or here, all your grades as measured by that. And if you're interested in research, the question to me is then who's going to be the better scientist? Because there are no courses, that are named how to be the best scientist or something like that. So then suddenly they are confronted with those constructs and think about the question I always ask is, you tell me in other classes if there was an opportunity or an occasion where you got this grade and you thought, oh my God, I know more than this, that what this number or letter is telling me, or the other way around, did I get an A on this? I don't even know what this is. And they will confirm, yeah, that's a lot of the case. Sometimes I don't even know how I got this grade in this class because I don't remember anything, which is also the other sad part, right? We spend 16 weeks in a class that you don't remember the next semester. That's not learning. I mean, that was something different. Learning needs to stick. And then you have reference and you can go back and say, no, I know I learned this back then. I'm going to go check it out again. So there's a lot of really things that with the grading system that doesn't really motivate students to really learn for the sake of learning, but they learn for the sake of the grade. And we have forced them to do that all these years, right? So to talk about ungrading is, and when I talk about ungrading for students, because they need to understand that in my class, they can opt to be in this ungrading experience, right? Or they can opt out of that and be graded in the traditional way. I make sure that both styles, if you will, they match, they correspond. So no one is getting more access to resources or I need to maintain the equity of those two because if a student really wants to be transactional and wants to do it that way, well, it's their choice, right? And if a student wants to be ungraded or achieve a grade through a different kind of experience, it's their choice as well. And they have to be very clear of what's behind each one of the choices. So what I try is kind of move the students from having too much of extrinsic motivation into more intrinsic motivation, to move them from the overemphasis on how well they're doing into what are they doing, what exactly are they getting from this one thing that they're doing in my class. The activities now, I redesign a lot of my activities, which is one of the positive things about switching to ungrading. A lot of my assignments in the end didn't make sense, and there's no need to keep them. I had to redesign a lot of things, throw away a lot of the stuff that I used to do, and open the door for other things, new things, and sometimes crazy things. But that's kind of my nature. I do like to take risks and see what happens. So activities that going from activities that yield grades only to activities that replace that. So grades, unfortunately, they also instill this competition in between students. And a lot of people like competition. I happen not to like competition. I like collaboration rather than competition.
But there is some value in competition.
Yes, competition.
And maybe there's too much that is attributed to competition, but there is some value to it.
Competition generates a lot of innovation, right? But even during competition without collaboration, then it becomes more like a throat cutting.
Well, sure. I mean, you can do one at the extent of the other, just replace it altogether. But yeah, collaboration, particularly if we're trying to prepare them for the world outside of class, is important.
The competition that I've seen in my case, for example, is I use a tool that puts everybody at the same level, as demonstrated by how many correct questions they are answering throughout, an activity, throughout an assessment. But the thing is, um, once they have the way this technology works is not based on who answers the questions first. Some student might need 20 questions to demonstrate that there is some kind of understanding of this particular learning objective, but some students may need 50.
And that's how next.
But once they
is
both
organized.
demonstrate that, even if somebody took 50, right, they both are reaching the same level. And by that I mean, this is not a competition who gets there first.
Right.
This is who gets there.
Right.
Who gets there if somebody, because previous knowledge, because you've taken the course again, because whatever, you can demonstrate with less questions your understanding of this content, right? Compared to somebody else who is perhaps the first time that seeing this. Maybe English is not their first language.
Right.
A lot of different reasons. But once they get there, as demonstrated by that tool, they're at the same level, right? So we're not talking about these kind of competition.
Well, competition academically, when you took courses where students were fitted to a curve, where there's only so many A's, so many, then it became a little bit more competitive. But if all my students can get A's, they have that possibility.
Mm-hmm.
There may be a little bit less competition, but still, people are naturally competitive. They want to know, did I do better than she, or did she do better than him? That kind of thing. We all compare to each other. We just have that instinct for some reason.
Well, we've been doing it forever, right? When we do it perhaps with our own kids, or we actually compare ourselves to somebody else.
Yeah.
We have all been conditioned kind of that way, to be that way throughout our own educational experience. So that already is telling you that when I talk about students about these, we do spend quite a bit of time talking about it, because grading is the one thing that we want to know. How am I going to be graded here? How am I going to get a grade, right? Not what grade I'm going to have, but how am I going to get it? And that already, if you ask them, everybody wants the coveted A, right? So there has to be buy-in from them. Otherwise, implementing this in a class, if there's no buy-in, it just doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
So do it. Force them to do it doesn't work either. They have to understand exactly what does ungrading mean. And if I can summarize, the one benefit of ungrading for a student is to relieve them from the stress of thinking about grades. Because like I mentioned, the first day of class, some of them are already stressed about the grade they're going to get. We haven't even started. So I do offer them the option of getting out of that stress. And as you will see later, it also has eliminated the begging at the end of the semester. Can I have some extra credit? Can I? That's actually spelled out at the very beginning. As I don't give any extra anything, because everything I thought you could do extra is already included. My course.
Well, it ends up being busy work.
Yeah.
Busy work that really doesn't add value, just so we can increase the grade.
Yes.
That's what happens.
Yeah. So it's they ask if my class is easy or it's hard. I said those are the wrong qualifiers for my class. I can tell. You will tell me at the end. But I can tell it's going to be demanding. That is a problem. You're going to spend time with this. As we all, when we want to learn something, you have to spend time there.
And effort.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So my job is to see if I can make your spending time on it and more enjoyable. So it becomes something that you look forward to rather than a chore. And that, of course, I think that's a lovable. But like I said, I'm idealistic sometimes. I think it can be done.
Well, it's worth pursuing.
Yes. And to the question that somebody asked me, why would I even like to do that? Because right now I think I have to change everything I do. I don't know because that depends on how everybody designs their courses. But there are a few reasons why I think trying it might be beneficial. It may remove the stress of focusing on grades. That's for students. It creates a positive atmosphere without the threat of anything, which we should always be doing that in class. To me, it has completely ended the end of semester dating.
Well, students oftentimes equate grades to their own value, to
Or
their own
knowledge.
worth.
Or knowledge.
Yeah.
Which is another one of the bad things about grading. If I give you your assignment back and there's a C, what is the message that I'm sending you? Even if I say that you need to improve, no, that letter already told you I'm not good enough. And if I give you an A, and I said, but there are still some things that you need to improve, you don't care about, don't even listen to that part. Oh, I'm good, because this letter tells me that I'm good. So you'll see that for grading, letters and scores are really not in my repertoire anymore. There's another alternative that they have to consider if they want to know when or how or and about what to improve. So there are many reasons why it's worth trying. Now, this would be my traditional grading system, and if somebody doesn't want to be ungraded, but they're grading this way. There are percentages due to exam, and even like that, exams are not really the highest percentage, just about 20% or so. I put a lot of them at the beginning. One of my high impact practices was active learning, so there's a lot of doing. My class has a lab, so there's a lot of doing in the lab, but I'm talking about like the theoretical framework of the class.
Well,
So
the
there's a lot
background
of
information they need
Yes.
in order to apply.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's not like they don't like lectures, which is another first question. Another question on the first day. I give them flip charts and I say, you write down 3 things that you don't think have worked for you. I mean, from your classes, and lectures is always there. I said, okay, then I understand that, because that is pretty much passive learning. Just one person talking. I don't, and you tell me also, I can listen to a person for like 3 hours. So that is minimized in my class. But of course, we're going to invest our time doing something else. We're going to do hands-on stuff. But for that, you need to read ahead of time, not to learn, because then I'm out of the job. You read ahead of time to get confused. You read ahead of time to say, oh, what does this mean?
Well, I tell my students, you just need to get that stuff between your ears. And it's floating around in there. It doesn't make sense necessarily. When we come together, it's my hope that I can help you make sense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then those activities are good for that, right?
Yeah.
And they actually can see it in some way. So in a way, I say, when you read, you're just firing your neurons, to learn. And when we come here and do an activity to reinforce that, now you're wiring the stuff. You're wiring your neurons.
Yeah.
And a good thing about my class is that the lab is very much tied to the lecture part. They can see in the lab all the concepts that we're talking in the theory. So it's nice to have it that way as well. But even when I didn't do ungrading, I always focused on a grading system that was easy for them to understand. And it's a mathematical formula in the end. And I have the formula that I shared with them, and I said every day during the semester you can calculate how you are.
You should be able to.
As you complete more assignments, you just have to replace some of the numbers. But you can. No one should come to the finals week thinking, "Am I going to pass?" You should already know. It should be transparent. It should be easily they should find it easy to calculate. So, but the point to make here is that the ungrading part is 100% compatible or equivalent to these.
Okay.
Especially if students don't.
Because you're inserting a letter grade ultimately.
Yeah, in the end.
In the end. Yeah. Okay.
For some students, it will be a calculation, and for others, it will be a different way to get to that.
Right. And you're giving them the option to be graded traditionally or ungraded, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
They also have the option to switch mid-semester.
Midterm. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Midstream, huh?
Yeah. Somebody who is ungraded, and they said, well, I kind of want to go back to the other. Fine, because I'm still recording all their assignments. If it's a satisfactory assignment, okay, that has a numerical representation. Only that for somebody who's ungraded, it just means that you incorporated my feedback, you did it again, now I'm satisfied with your assignment, now it's an assignment that is accepted.
Okay.
I count how many accepted assignments really versus assignments that were not turned in or assignments that are still unacceptable.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always a choice. You know that you have to improve. Now, if you want to improve, I'm telling you how. In in the traditional grading system is, this is a C, but you have another chance. I wrote some feedback for you. You want to improve this C, then you know what to do, right? And when you give it to me again, then we'll see if you improve. So then both styles actually have the same access to everything. This semester I have a student that opted out. It says, I'm not sure. I think I understand, but I'm just not sure. This is kind of too new to me. I kind of need to know how good my assignment is, and I think the number represents that. Fine, that's fine. This person has a chance to switch in the new semester.
Mm-hmm.
So how do I actually do this? All of these ungrading, this stuff working. So to implement this, research is always a good starting point, and there is a lot of research being done in this, and many different examples on how to make it operational in a class. It's not the same thing for a science class than for a literature class. The ways in which the grading can be implemented are very diverse, and luckily there are examples for different disciplines, for STEM and non-STEM. The other thing is to have a strategy to do it, and what I just gave you a copy of that. That's how I do it. It's called contract grading, only because I don't have a better word for contract. It could be an agreement or something, and I wasn't done that. Sometimes I have to explain to students that, okay, this is not a legal agreement, no lawyers involved, but I don't have any other better word. But it's really something that they understand and they will sign on to, that they're going to follow if they want whatever grade they want, because they choose the grade they want.
I just glanced through this, and my notion of contract grade, if you want to get a C, you have to do these 3 things.
Yeah.
If you want a D, you got to do these 4 things. If you want an A, you got to do these 5
Yeah,
things.
exactly.
So you just add something to, so the C is the base. It's the minimum you got to do to pass the class. But if you want a higher grade, there are some extra steps you have to go through.
Yeah, I started from the top actually.
Yeah, you went from top down.
I
went
said,
from bottom
if you
up.
want an A, this is what you need to do.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what any student would like to do if they really
Well, I
want
have students,
an A.
it's a matter of economics. I really don't have the time to do an A. I can do a B and be fine with it. Now, you're right, most students want the A, but the realistic ones will say, hey, B is doable. That's fine enough for me.
Yeah. So the most important thing I would say to implement this is you gotta talk to your chair and your dean, because students, of course, are gonna, I'm not gonna get a grade. How am I not gonna get a grade? And then they're gonna go and complain to someone, right? Dr. G is not gonna give me a grade. It's not about that. It's how they're gonna get their grade.
Yeah.
I did that actually, and there were a lot of questions coming from the vice president, and there were valid questions that
She wasn't familiar with contract grading.
Yeah, but it's not done yet. So
well, I do it in my practicum class. Yeah.
And remember, I was pretty much asking permission, so I could do
Who
it.
reviews your syllabus to make sure it complies with all the policies?
The dean.
Okay. We don't have the dean. We have the assistants that look it over, and they got confused. I had to explain to them.
Yeah.
Because they're not used to seeing a contract grading structure.
Yeah.
And I said, there's still an A, B, C, D, F.
Yeah.
It's just that it's not according to points. It's according
There's
to
an
accomplishments.
extensive section in my syllabus that explains what it is.
Yeah.
But the traditional grading system is also there.
Yeah.
For comparison. And the other thing is you gotta have a plan B if it doesn't work, always. And be willing to accept when things just didn't work.
Yeah, it went to crap. It fell apart.
Yeah.
That's all.
I mean, the first time I did it, it was a bit terrifying because I just didn't know. So, and when I surveyed the students, I saw some of the things that need to be improved. I've been doing this since the spring of 22. Okay, so how to implement it? I do it by something called contract grading, but it's the first step is to ask students what do they think about, to explain to them what it is. Because like I say, there's no buy-in from them. It's just not going to work. The whole point here is not the grade itself. The whole point is for them to forget about the grade so that they focus on learning for the sake of learning, not learning because the grade. Because if they do demonstrate their learning, and that's where we design the activities that help us find that out, the grade follows, right? So there are just a few pointers here on how to start that conversation with students, right? But they, in my opinion, they do have to agree with it. They do have to have a buy-in.
Now, I will tell you that I have done contract grading. And I haven't had this discussion. I said, this is how it works. But maybe you're doing something different than I did. I mean, they just accepted it because I had to. I didn't give them a choice. You're giving them a choice.
Yeah.
Okay.
The
So
first time I didn't give them a choice. I said, we're going to do it this way. And when I survey them, so a
you
student
found the
said,
glitches.
yeah, a student says it's better if you, I mean, some people may, especially this person said, older students might not want to do this. Older students might be used to the actual scores in return for their effort, right?
Yeah.
It's a valid point. So since then, I don't do it
Okay.
mandatory. It's just
Okay.
whoever wants to do
You
it.
have the two methods
Yeah.
and they get to choose.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what is contract grading really? This is how the operational part of it. In contract grading, students determine their grade. The contract actually explains to them that to get an A, there are 6 things that need to be that they need to comply with. Attendance obviously is one, because I do so much active learning that if they're not there, they cannot claim the engagement activity, right? People call that participation or something, but
Whatever.
I call it engagement.
Yeah.
So in the traditional system, if I say that active learning is 35% of the grade, well, they have to be present for the activity in the classroom to claim that engagement. Otherwise, they cannot claim it. Somebody was arguing, saying, you cannot do that. It's illegal to tell a student you have to be here to get a good grade. I said, I'm not saying that. I'm saying you have to be here to participate in these activities. And if you are not here, there are absences that are considered excused. Anything that has to do with medical is excused. There are emergencies, and I'm aware of emergencies, but if somebody just stops coming and I don't know about it, there's nothing I can do, right? If you are not here and I don't know, and I don't need details, but if you have an emergency, or you're stuck at the train, or you're tired, or whatever, then I can be in and I can decide what to do. But if somebody just doesn't show up, I'm not going to start thinking, oh, why? There's 100 different reasons why they may not be there. So it also encourages them to be a little bit more accountable. Even if they say, I'm so sorry, I fell asleep, and then I find out that they have these shifts that are so crazy that it's just unbelievable that it's still in my class, I might decide, don't worry about it. I'll give you another activity, but let's not make it a habit. Right?
Yeah.
So attendance is one. The other thing is they have to complete. I do have something like chapter exams that I have online, because they're going to be taking exams anyway. So it's good practice for them.
Oh yeah.
And this course is just for them. It's not for me.
Yeah.
So they have to do all of them. If somebody wants an A, I have a lot of lab simulations that they need to do before each lab. They have to complete them all. So if somebody wants to take a class, this is all they have to do. So it's spelled out there. And then it says, if you want a B, then the only thing you are not responsible for is some pre-class quizzes that I have. You can, forget about those.
Right.
Do them if you want to, but I will not hold you accountable for those. Now, if you want to see, don't do any of that, and don't do the lab simulations. The rest you have to do. And there is no leniency in attendance for any of these, right? And I don't offer a D because a D really is not a passing grade.
Not for that program.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Because all your courses in my program have to be a C or better.
exactly.
Now, D is technically passing. However, we define what passing is.
Yeah.
It's C or better.
Yeah. And they recognize,
Yeah.
fine, a D, I don't know.
I gotta repeat it, or
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm out of the program, or whatever.
So they understand that part.
Yeah.
So they laugh that actually I write it, that I don't offer this. There is no contract for a D. So then they have to return these to me. They have 2 weeks to think about it. And don't ask all the questions that you want to ask about these. And here's the deal. When you tell me that you want an A, you have to be aware of what you're getting into. If you tell me that a B is okay for you, you have to be okay with that.
Yeah.
Because I am not forcing you. You are making your decision. A lot of students actually do say, I don't have enough. I mean, I have 2 jobs and
Yeah.
I don't have enough time to do all of these,
Yeah.
but I still would like to have the class. I'm okay with the B.
Yeah.
Now, there's consequences, obviously, right? If somebody wants an A, but suddenly is missing a lot of these, they are downgraded. And it says here, it's automatic downgrade to the other.
Well,
Right?
yeah, whatever objectives you've achieved, though, that's what your grade will reflect. If you've only achieved C objectives, that's the grade you get. Yeah.
So there is an option here for them. Because sometimes students want to play it safe. And they say, I'm okay with a B because I don't know if I have enough time for all the stuff to get an A. So a B, okay. And then they find themselves with enough time to do everything. So they have the option that when they find themselves in that position, they can come to me and say, I've been doing everything really. But turns out I really have more time than I thought. Can I upgrade myself? And they can.
You know, that's kind of interesting because you're having a student commit to a grade and what it entails. I just tell the students that these are the grades and what they mean. You know, if you're not even, they're not really engaging in the contract. It's called a contract grade, but it's based on what you're willing to do.
Mm-hmm.
If you're only willing to do B stuff, that's what you're going to get. But if you want to do A, you don't need to confer with me. Just do the extra stuff, and
Exactly.
if
And
it's
it
acceptable, I'll give you an A.
Yeah. And I have had also the opposite. When a student has come to me and said, I had a lot of, she had a lot of absences,
Mhm.
you know, and she said, I just can do this, but I'm okay with the B. I know that I did not achieve this
Yeah.
part.
Yeah.
So, I mean, she done grading herself.
Yeah.
The thing is, I don't push them either way because this is the part of their accountability. So they have enough time to think about it and to decide what they are committing to. Some students don't even need my class for GPA anyway, but they still like the class.
Yeah.
And they're happy with a C. I have had some students that actually, I mean, when I see that, it's not okay, but this is your choice. You know?
Right.
I do make sure to explain that if they find themselves really with more time than they thought, and
They want to
so
upgrade.
even the stuff that you're not responsible to do, try it for the fun of it, you know.
Oh, yeah.
It's
That's
not
an
gonna
option,
count
sure.
because you say you want a B or a C, but suddenly, if you think that it should count, you're completing everything, then that's a conversation that we should have. So, but it has to come from them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's very straightforward. That's the thing, and it has to be really very straightforward and easy to understand for them. So how do I actually do the grading? Because that's the question.
Yeah.
Well, there's no grading. It's detailed feedback. There's no letters, no numbers. So here's an example.
Just verbiage.
Yeah.
Just words.
Yes.
Okay.
And the feedback is heavy. So there's an activity, one of those active learning things they do, right?
Like gram stains. I'm familiar with gram
Exactly.
stains.
So
Yeah.
they have to do sketches, and they actually lose their fear of drawing because they think they have to be Michelangelo.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
it's just a sketch.
Yeah.
So I said, If you want to copy something from Google, that's fine, but it's not the purpose. Just a sketch, you know.
What
But
did
a
you
sketch-
see?
A
Try
sketch that
to,
needs
try
to
to
be
draw what you saw.
exactly.
Yeah.
A sketch needs to be complete and needs to be accurate.
Mhm.
So you're gonna put all, in this case, is the cell wall.
Mhm.
You're gonna put all the components of the cell wall, but they have to be in the correct anatomical
Place, yeah,
position,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because there is a reason why they are like that.
Yeah.
Cell.
Yeah.
So when this is an example of the two on the right are example of what I call heavy feedback. So those two sketches, as nice and colorful as they look like, they were not acceptable at that point, right? So this is like
So you're telling them what they need to do
Mhm.
in order to make it acceptable.
Yes.
Yeah.
Either they're going to give me a new sketch, or I'm going to have another activity that will have them identify things in another sketch to see if they actually got the feedback into consideration, because they have to internalize that feedback if they want to improve.
Do you put some kind of code on there that tells you that this is the level of achievement that they have done?
No, only if the things that they need to improve.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And usually they don't repeat more than once. Actually.
But like for example, my students have to achieve competency, so they have to demonstrate skills.
Yeah.
I generally give them 3 tries. I let them practice a bunch, you know, and I supervise it. And then I let them practice on their own without anybody hovering over them. And then when they think they're ready to demonstrate it, they do it. And I do have students that usually it's very rare that it takes more than 3 tries. I actually take a 4th try if they need it, but I rarely have to do that. They don't know that though. They think it's 3 tries.
In the lab part of the class, it's more like that.
Right.
Especially when they're learning how to prepare plates with bacteria, and there's a specific way of doing it, right?
But there are some things that are paper-based. For example, I give them some data, and I say, you need to develop a control chart to tell me if your results are in control. You know, there have been so many standard deviations, that kind of thing. And so they actually have to do the computation. They got to draw it on the graph, and you know, I will give them, you know, the grade that they get. But you basically just say, this is what's missing, fix it, and I'll upgrade whatever.
Yeah, if it's fixed.
Yeah, if it's fixed. Otherwise, it stays where it is.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
So it becomes from unacceptable becomes acceptable. And then,
Are those the 2 words that you use?
Yeah.
Acceptable, unacceptable. And so,
unacceptable in terms of when it's accepted means it's not completed, right? If it's not accepted yet, it's not completed yet.
Or it could be an error in some way, right?
An error.
In error, so it's not accurate.
Yes.
So you haven't displayed all the components that's necessary, or the ones that you have are not represented properly.
Yeah.
Right. So that's unacceptable.
Yeah. Or satisfactory versus non-satisfactory.
Either way.
Either way.
Satisfactory, non-satisfactory, unsatisfactory. Right.
Yeah.
S or U. That's the word. It's a grade school here in the United States.
Yeah.
S or U. You always want the S's.
And then I have another example there for that. That is more if we're talking about quizzes. It's not sketches or anything. I do these funny things, these emojis of a happy face, a sad face, or a face, a neck kind of face, like I'm not sure, you know, but not really a sad face that is like I have no idea.
Okay.
So they got.
So is that what you're circling there?
Yeah, they circle that.
Oh, they circle. Okay.
Yeah. So basically, there's no scores there.
Right.
So they answer questions, but then the last column is how sure are you? How certain were you of your answer?
Okay.
So they happy face means I'm really sure.
Yeah.
And then in the end, when we go over this, they correct their own tests. Those are the check marks that you see there.
Okay.
And we only count the ones that are correct, right? The ones that are incorrect, they actually correct them. So there's no excess.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So the whole point of the circles is also for them to, and the feedback that I give them, which is in green there, is that for that question you were aware that you were correct. It's the metacognitive level.
Yeah.
So they get a little bit of an idea of what their metacognition in that particular quiz was.
Yeah.
Right? Because in the end, I said the score doesn't matter here. I want you to tell me how many questions you say happy face, I'm very sure, and you were correct.
Yeah, you had good correspondence.
Yeah, because sometimes they say, oh, I'm very sure, and they're incorrect.
That's
So
right,
that metacognitive level is unaware that you don't know. So if you don't know, if you're unaware that you don't know things, sometimes there's no need to learning, right? You need to be aware that you don't know. Because then the response is, okay, I need to know now, I need to learn this.
Yeah, okay.
But those levels are hard to detect unless we kind of do it like this, practicing like this. Here's another example of the unsatisfactory. So the assignment that they submitted, so the flip chart, is the first drawing, right? So I take a picture of that and I spend a weekend in my iPad blowing the picture of and doing the feedback there.
Okay.
So I returned them that with my feedback in the middle. Yeah.
Red and yellow. Okay.
And then they gave me the ones after the feedback.
The corrected one. Okay.
Yeah. And now, the reason I'm showing this one is that I had a different activity for people to work, and they did, except for this group. They actually came up with this. They said, okay, we saw the feedback, and then we did it again. Here it is. That came from them.
Oh, they just naturally redid it.
Exactly.
To correct. Okay. You didn't have to prompt them.
Nope.
Okay.
And then I said, okay, this is exactly, it doesn't have to do everybody. You usually have to say, okay, here's another activity so you can show me that you internalize and consider my feedback, and then you are going to improve, right? This group did it without
being told. Yes.
So there is a way.
So how do you code that is satisfactory?
Now
with nothing, you have no comments. Is that what it means?
Other than this is great now.
Yeah. So you have no comments on there.
Nope. Because
so if there's no comments, we're good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
If there's comments on there.
Sometimes I do a comment, this is great.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Or I have nothing to say about this. This is great, and now it's acceptable.
Yeah.
Now
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
What I loved about this part is that they came. It was their intrinsic motivation.
Yeah. I want to get this right.
To show me, yes, okay.
Yeah.
This is what we got wrong, but I think we have it right now, and they were correct.
I have a logistical question. So
Yes.
You're pulling this up on your iPad. Are you pulling up their assignments from Blackboard? Do you have them turned into Blackboard? Are you pulling them up from Blackboard and putting them into like Notability or something? So you can
I have used Notability. I have a lot of different apps.
Okay.
The one I use for this is actually called Paper.
Okay.
Because paper is really for drawing and painting and things. And I like it because of the different tools that it has.
And what's it called?
Paper.
Oh, it's just called Paper?
Just paper.
Okay.
But
you have
Notability
to
does
submit
it too.
this. Okay.
Because you
so
can
just pull
export
it
the
up in an app
pictures.
and you
Yeah.
can write on it. Okay.
And the ability to export that as an image. So when each group has a maximum of 4 people, so you kind of see their names where it says table 1 and the 4 names there. So when I'm done with that, through Blackboard, I send not an email through Blackboard, but it's a message through Blackboard. And then I put their 4 names, right? And I said, here's the feedback of your sketch.
Okay.
And then insert the picture, and then the 4 of them get it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You can insert a picture in messages?
Just
okay.
like an attachment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then they get it.
Okay.
Now, here is where I think some people might say, oh, come on, that's a lot of work. But I teach 3 sections, so I might end up with 18 things to do, but that's the job, right? And to me, that's a lot more.
You got to figure out what you're willing to do and
Yeah.
create it so that you can do it.
Yeah, it replaces all the things that I could be doing actually, like exams and things like that.
Yeah.
I have more. I like to do these kind of feedback on these kinds of things rather than just check marks on a test, because the test is a tool. Now that's a standard tool, and if you ask the students the first day of class, how many of you like tests? I mean, very few will say yes, I love tests. They don't like them.
Well, the ones that do, they want validation that they know what they studied. Generally,
Yeah.
is what I found. I had a son that loved taking tests because it would confirm that
Yeah.
he knew something. Yeah.
The problem is when not everybody is a good test taker.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And then,
It's a different skill than knowing something.
yes.
Yeah.
So I think that tests then become really unequitable because now we're forcing everybody to show knowledge, if that's what tests are actually looking for, with the same tool. Here, some of them are not good at sketching, right? But they actually can say, no, you gotta do this in a different way. So it actually allows for students another way in which they can demonstrate what they think they know,
Yeah.
not necessarily through
Yeah.
tests. So my class has a combination of a lot of different things.
Mhm.
You know. So this is kind of an example of how that is. If it's something that has to do with papers, it's the exact same thing. It's just feedback.
Okay.
It's feedback, no letters and no numbers. If they really
So
want
this-
to know
this
what
is-
is to improve, they have to really read it. They have to see the feedback.
This is your BACT class, or is it microbiology?
Microbiology.
Micro. So
Mhm.
are you focusing on, you're doing bacteriology, virology?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
And yeast and molds and things like that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
now because it's a different semester and I'm also doing crazy things, we're doing another approach with
Mhm.
AI. I don't fight AI. It has a place, but we use it for fun. I started to make AI generated songs with content.
Okay.
There is one about staining. There's
Okay.
one about metabolism. There's
All right.
with different rhythms.
Uh-huh.
You know? I mean, those things are not new. Remember the ABC song?
Yeah.
There's a song for anatomy about the bones.
Yes.
Those are all songs. There's
Yes.
one for chemistry. I'm just doing it in a different way
Sure.
because I'm not that good at coming up with my own
You're not
lyrics.
that creative.
So suddenly they started to get into it, and in one of my classes, now this person, is there a new song for us today? It was like, okay, now there's going to be a contest because now they want to see. I mean, I said we should do this at contest, and they want to do it. They want to generate very specific lyrics and songs about. We're gonna choose what topics, and usually it's gonna be the most challenging ones, because the purpose is to use that to help them study, to help
Yeah.
them prepare, to
Yeah,
help them
right.
learn.
Well, it's like the
right?
acronyms, learning the 12 cranial
Yeah.
nerves, you know.
And it's
on-
not about substituting anything. It's just another tool like that. So now they are into that. That's what
Okay.
Laura was talking about.
Yeah, the
I
songs,
make-
music.
Well, I have 8 units in my class, so every unit has 2 or 3 songs that
Okay.
refer to different parts of the content. So I designed it as an old CD, you know, the cover and the it's on online, so they click on the song and it
Okay.
plays. So anyway, this is just kind of a little blow up of the.
Yeah. Principles of micro-
Yeah. So when I survey the students the first time, first of all, I usually expect 34%, participation in surveys. So I was pretty happy that it was about 70% that they have something to say about.
Can I talk to you about that a little bit later?
Yeah.
Okay. I
So.
want to get your impression about something.
So here, I think the majority agree that knowing the grade that they will get from the very beginning, it helped them to stay motivated because they said, I don't have to worry about it. I know, and of course, this is a promise that I made. If you want an A, provided you do that,
That's right, yeah.
that's it. I'm not going to change that.
Yeah.
Now, about half of them really still admitted that they complete things, at kind of the last minute.
Yeah.
Right. That's extrinsic motivation because afraid that if I don't do it, then I don't get the grade. But the only one student really in that particular survey, only one student felt that ungrading was not for them and preferred to work for a grade or a score. We always, I think, should always expect that some students, for whatever reason, will not.
Well, it's interesting because I don't see it to be a whole lot of difference between
No.
grading and ungrading. It's just maybe how it's presented or how it.
To me,
But
to be
it's
honest,
interesting. Well, I used to call my tests quizzes. I call them quizzes.
Yeah.
And they tended to have less anxiety about it. I just discovered that by accident. Oh, this is just a quiz? Yeah, what's the same percentage, just same number of points, you know?
One thing that was interesting is that when I surveyed them later, at the very end, and I said, okay, you know what grade you wanted, you worked for it, and that's what you got.
That's what you got.
Now you tell me, is that really the grade you should have gotten? You know
Oh,
what your
yeah.
effort was. I know you did it because
Yeah.
you tell me. And it's interesting that it's almost 30% of the students who contracted for an A, they say that they probably deserve a B. So sometimes they don't even, they sell themselves a little too short.
Well, did they get
tend to
the A?
grade
They
themselves.
did.
They did
Which
get the A, but when
means-
they reflect on it, it says, I really did B work. Is that what they're saying?
Exactly, but
They
that
always
is,
grade themselves lower than.
exactly. And that, I don't have an answer for that, but it's just interesting to know.
I guess I've never
They
asked that
did.
question. I've been teaching for nearly 40 years, and I know that people are generally hard on themselves.
Mhm.
And since my students are predominantly women, that's going to be the case. Women are more likely to be harder on themselves than men, generally, as a trend. But
So it was just kind of an interesting observation
Yeah,
that
yeah.
and I know that they work hard for that, they completed every single thing. And
well,
if
they
I
worked
didn't-
hard enough.
Yes.
Whatever that means,
Well,
they
if
worked hard
I,
enough.
if I decided that their assignments were now satisfactory, they actually improve upon the first one.
Well,
So,
yeah.
at least by the ways I'm measuring,
And
you
you're
should
all,
feel-
and it almost always is done by the second attempt. They don't have to do 3 or 4 attempts.
No.
Okay.
When I have I teach rhetoric, when I have my students, I've been doing this for years, grade themselves before they turn it in.
Oh, yeah.
And justify their grade, almost always, they grade themselves a
Yeah.
little
Oh, okay,
lower than what
okay.
they
yeah,
actually
we are
are.
worst judges sometimes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well,
I
we
think-
have a standard in mind.
Yeah.
It's like I tell my students, I really am the standard. Because I know what it is that you need to know, and I know at the level that you need to know it to be successful in your career.
Yeah.
And
another thing that I've found that is important to do is you survey them at least twice, to see how their experience is going. To me, the most important part is, are you really, am I really helping you not to be stressed about your grade? And that's the thing, because we enshrine the finals too, right? It's like your impending doom. We have a specific week that we call the finals week.
finals
and
week.
It's like a lot of them are so stressed by the finals week. And
Do you do comprehensive final?
No.
See, I don't either. I had it for years. It's
No,
the
but they
last
have-
unit test. If I give a test, it's the last unit test. That's it.
I have 2 modalities in my finals. One is a debate, it's groups debating other groups, but they have about 8 weeks to prepare. And the other is a case study that they have to solve.
Mhm.
I mix a little bit of reality but a little bit of fiction. I don't
Mhm.
tell them which is which, right?
Yeah.
But that actually examines everything they think they know lab-wise too, because now they have to see results, clinical results. They have
Yeah.
to see test results.
Yeah.
They have to see all of that. And there's a series
Are
of
you having
questions.
an ID like certain
Oh,
bacteria?
yeah.
Okay.
No, actually, I already tell them what it is, but
Prove it to me that
the
that's what it
case is like this. In a hospital, they did all these tests. This person was then prescribed an antibiotic and it didn't help.
Yeah.
Now the person moved to a different town, went to another hospital. They run the exact same tests. They prescribed this antibiotic and now it worked. So what tests were misinterpreted in the first hospital? Which is a lot more difficult.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So they have all
Yeah.
the test results there. They have pictures. They have
You
absolutely
do
everything.
gram stain, you do catalyst, and yeah.
So it becomes really very interesting. But the thing is, they don't come to the day of the final to do that. We're going to have fun to the day of the final, actually, and some baked goodies. They come to discuss how they solved it, because they start a week in advance.
Yeah.
So I don't want them to start solving it there. They have to work on that, and then the day of the final, they just tell me, this is how we solve it, and they discuss between them. The final is, because this ungrading, final means nothing, really. It's the last chance for them to have some fun, because the grade is already
Yeah, it's
there.
already been determined. Yeah.
Exactly.
They've already figured out.
Now, if they don't work on the final, of course, that's an assignment that is unsatisfactory, and then
Yeah.
they could be downgraded. But
Mhm.
they seem to actually do that with a lot. It's like a challenge for them. It's like detective work, you know. Besides the practical, we have a practical, but
Right.
it's like
And they're
and it's a
enthusiastic
real-
about it?
Yeah, and it's a real case. There's a fiction part, only
Right.
the locations where I put the
Mhm.
protagonists,
Mhm.
but the rest is actually a real case. It's and it happens. It could happen very often if somebody's working with expiry agents, for example,
Sure.
or if a technician is not really highly trained into these things.
And they're not
it's
doing the
interpret-
standard protocol, they're not
Yeah,
incubating
so-
it for the right period of time. that kind of
Exactly.
thing. Yeah,
So there are a couple of tests that were misinterpreted and that led to the wrong diagnosis of the bacterial infection and
Mhm.
obviously the wrong antibiotic.
Yeah.
So it generates a nice discussion.
Good.
So this is just some of the comments that I've been collecting since the spring of 22 until now. Fall 23 are not there because in the last year, in the summer, I had a health issue that had me recovering all the fall. So
Okay.
I didn't really, I was more focusing on recovering than
Sure.
than serving them. I did do it ungraded then, so, but I didn't collect much information.
Well, are you finding consistency in the feedback? Okay.
The parts that are more encouraging for me is but all of these, but the third one, for example, says I felt more free. I felt more free to focus my learning on aspects of the content that I either found interesting or felt it would be likely to be applicable to my future life on class. Rather than memorizing details, I will not be likely to need to chase a grade. That's the part. That's the hope that I'm seeing here. Every semester I tweak certain things, right? Somebody's talking about the format of grading that helps students take accountability of what they're doing. There's another there, the grading structure I like. It makes us students more motivated to really learn in class and not having to worry about grades. That is perhaps the main purpose for me, to eliminate that stressor, right? So perhaps learning now becomes more like something that they want to do because they're curious, not because there's a grade in the middle, right? But yeah, it's still a work in progress. I think it's going to be a work in progress all the time. The groups are different, right? So I have to find out what makes them tick to find the right balance there for the activities that we do.
Okay, so the difference that I see is you're putting feedback on, but you're not giving them, let's say it's worth 50 points, you're not giving them 35 out of 50 points or whatever, you're just putting the feedback. And then they redo it, and it's either successful or unsuccessful, right?
Satisfactory or
Satisfactory or unsatisfactory.
Mhm.
So
But
satisfactory for
if
all
it's-
6,
If it's still not satisfactory, they can keep doing it many times until it is satisfactory.
but if it's not, if they don't achieve satisfactory, so if satisfactory is all 6, they get an A.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So yeah. Okay.
The thing is, for
It's
example,
very holistic because what you're tempted to do is give them the grade, and you don't give them an opportunity to improve it, right? Because you're expecting you need to get this right the first time. If you don't get this right the first time, you're going to get something less than 100%. That's the traditional way to do it. That's how I've done it for many years.
Yeah. Some students do get a little puzzled about the second chance.
Oh, sure.
So
it doesn't happen. Normally, it doesn't happen. You don't get a
Yeah.
second chance.
Exactly. So I think, your first chance is to kind of to size up this thing.
Yeah.
Is to find your weaknesses, because then you don't go and study the whole thing again.
Yeah.
There's some things you already know.
Yeah.
You actually focus on the stuff that you don't know. Those are the ones to improve.
Right.
So I guess my
It
point
does
is,
make their learning more efficient in many respects.
it's a smarter.
Well, it's like I give
way
my
of
students PowerPoint
studying.
notes and I tell them exactly what's going to be testable, and they're just writing the crap down. I said, it's already there.
Yeah.
All right, it's already there. Why are you wasting your time writing? It's already there. Strip it, do something, with it. put it on flashcards or what have you.
Cornell notes might be good for that.
Huh?
Cornell notes might be good.
Well, yeah, or, you know, Quizlet that can use. But the thing is, there are words there that you don't, like, you don't know. You should be writing down, because I don't have a definition, for example, for sequelae. It's there, but until I told you what it was, maybe you should write that down and don't worry about what's already written there. I did all the work for you in one respect. You have the information you need to know, and I focus it for them. But like you said, you give them an assignment, and the standard really sounds like it's all right, right? It's all right. It's positioned where it needs to be. It's labeled accordingly. You haven't missed anything. And if it's not all right, well, I gotta have all this feedback. Yeah, I have all this feedback. You're giving them an opportunity. That's what I do with medical terminology. When I teach medical terminology, I let them take the test over and over and over again until they get them right, because they gotta know them.
Yeah.
They gotta know them. And I don't know anybody else that does that, because I have students that they can't remember anything. I have to give them a separate assessment at the end of my course, even though they've taken the midterm. But when I teach midterm, oh yeah, you got less than 100, you can retake the test. I mean, it's all, I have it online, it's all rearranged anyway. But you need to know micro means small, minute. You know, you need to know OSIS is condition of. You need to know those things. So why would I give you an assessment if you don't know it all and say, oh, you're done, we'll move on?
To me, the reason they have...
So I'm a strong supporter of retesting or reassessing like you do.
To me, the point behind that is that I want them to see the improvement. So, and for this, I do use technology, right? So when it's a statistics quiz, you take it the first attempt, don't be tempted to take the second attempt right after.
Oh no, there's got to be some time.
The only feedback they have after the first attempt is the score.
Yeah.
Because they do once, I mean, I said the way you detect your weaknesses in this situation is we always know when there's a question that is making us, you know, hesitate.
Yeah.
Write that question down. That's usually when you have to go and revisit.
Yeah.
Now, when you're done with that, you can take your second attempt.
Yeah. Because I've had students ask me the same day, can I retake this? I said no. I said, look, the chances are you're not going to improve your score much. Okay? Because you haven't spent any time figuring out what you didn't know on this test. So you need to wait at least a week. I'll let you, you know, you can do it anytime next week, but not today, not this week.
Yeah.
Because you're just setting yourself up for failure. Because I'm only going to give you a second attempt because you already seen the test.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you a second attempt. All right. There's no third or fourth tries at this if it's that kind of.
Yeah.
But I mean, my competencies may get up to 3 tries. You only had to have them do it twice. They don't know it necessarily, but you'll let them do it the third time. Yeah. Because learning will occur.
Yes. So with the second chances, for example, at quiz, I said you focus. I mean, okay, there's more to these quizzes because the questions are bloomed. So some are bloom level 1, some are bloom level 2, some are bloom level 3.
Sure.
And we don't go in quizzes. We don't go beyond those. I have other activities to go beyond those.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I said the score really is meaningless. What you need to know is which one of these levels was your strongest. Because if your bloom level 1 is the strongest, you're trying to memorize too much stuff here. And that only takes you so far.
Yeah.
Now, if your application, you know, part of the quiz is your stronger, you know, you understand stuff.
You have to.
You understand stuff.
You must.
And that is the take-home message that you should have, not the global score.
And that's how the NCLEX is set up. So what you're modeling is what the NCLEX will measure when they take their nursing exams.
So it's kind of been a trip. I really like to do it this way in some aspects. Yeah.
What's your maximum class size for these?
24.
24.
Yeah.
And so you're doing this for 24 students generally, unless those who drop out. Huh?
3 sections.
Okay, so 75 or so.
Yeah. There's always a section that has. This semester I have a section with only 15, but only one student of that.
Okay.
So It's,
Has
I
your
still,
retention improved using this, do you think, or do you know? So you
Yeah,
have
I
fewer
don't-
students getting frustrated and saying, hell with this, not moving on.
no, usually, students that drop the class, they drop it after the first day. And,
Oh.
I don't really get to know why, that there's no, before we used to have
Yeah.
those little notes.
Well, and that's a maturity level too. I'm telling my students today, I said that when I was in college, I had colleagues that dropped a class because they didn't like the professor, and I said, what the heck? You're trying to achieve a degree in engineering, and you're going to put barriers in the way to completing your goal because you don't like the prof? Grow up. Grow up. You
Now, there
know?
are many reasons why, but this semester only one student dropped the first day, actually.
Yeah.
But no, it's pretty much the students.
Well,
that
I
came
mean,
in,
sometimes they know
they-
this just isn't for me, you know, if it was an elective, then I would give a shit. I might take a different
Yeah.
elective or whatnot, you know? Yeah,
So, this is pretty much how I do it.
well, that's good, that's good. That was a good illustration. I appreciate that. Because I was wondering how, you know, you are not assessing partial completion.
Mhm.
If it's only partial completion, you're getting it unsatisfactory, and it's not going to achieve one of these 6 objectives.
I think the one message that students understand now is that they think more about their improvement now. They understand that it's okay to be this low.
Well, the better value
and
is,
it doesn't matter where they start. What matters is where they end.
that's right. And the greater value is, okay, I was the kind of guy that if I got an A, it was a low A, 90%, 91%, 92%. I was pretty much, I was the kind of student that if I just showed up, I'd get a B. But to get an A took a lot of extra work. And I was generally a low A guy. So if you give a student a 90% and they get an A, but they still haven't demonstrated everything that's demonstrable.
Mhm.
You, by doing this, are generally giving an incentive or forcing that they show complete knowledge or application or whatever it is that you're assessing. Bravo.
Yeah, thank you.
That's cool. That's good. That's the approach I took with medical terminology. You got to know all these word parts. You know, you're going to be tested on a credentialing exam.
Yeah.
So how long is it going to take you? Now, what I say is that, you know, try to learn it the first time because everything else is rework. Rework is inefficient. Think about how much time you have to spend learning the stuff that you didn't demonstrate the first attempt and how much more time consuming that is. But if you want to do it that way, I'll let you do it. You know, I mean, ultimately, they didn't always get 100%, but it was the same stupid test.
Mhm.
I had the words on this side, the definitions on this side, match them up. You know, you want to take it a third time? Take it a third time. I'll give it to you as many times, but we only have so much time. We got 15 weeks, so you got to figure out how you get it done. You know, but that's the same kind of a thing. You know, that's very similar to what you're doing. You know, this is the assignment. And they do understand that, or do they not understand it until they actually, till the very first attempt, where you put all the feedback and said, you know, fix it, and I'll regrade it. Do they understand that from the beginning, or do
Yeah.
they just learn that as part of the process?
Famous words from students. Oh, that makes sense now. Well, that's exactly, because the first time it may not make sense.
Well, the thing is, too, you have to be careful not to tell them what it is, necessarily. Is that you're missing this, and you don't tell them exactly where it needs to go, but they can research it to find out where it goes and stuff, yeah.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, this went over time by,
I know.
High school during the day, that was just like, that's.
I'm gonna
Do I need
disconnect
to
a little
sign in
bit.
somewhere or something?
I think there's an
yeah, it should be
evaluation.
over there.
It's an evaluation form.
Okay.
Oh, is this it?
No, the sign-in is, I think, under
This
that
the
yellow
evaluation
sign, but
form?
this
Do we need to
evaluation,
turn
yeah.
this somewhere?
Do you have a few minutes, Gabe, or do you gotta bug out?
I have class in about 30 minutes.
Okay, so I won't take that much. is 10 to. All right.